Hi, I'm Cody Alexander. Welcome to another The Art of X show. Today we're talking about flexbone defense. We're going with part two. This will be covering all of the motions that are critical to defending this unique offense. And the biggest part of this necessarily outside of structure. So whether you're a 3-4 or you're a 4-3, or you're a stack, however you're going to defend it is how you react to the motions. Again, in part one, I laid out the 3-4 split field coverage, why I liked it, why I like that spacing against this offense. In fact, if you look at most of the academies at the Division I level, they run variations of a 3-4. I just like the way that it spaces out across it. And so the split field coverage aspect of this, for me, really comes down to reacting to the motions. And that's kind of the biggest part of the flexbone outside of actually lining up and not giving them any kind of gift reads off of your base alignment. So let's get into the motions. The one thing that you have to understand with motions is the way that you teach your corners and your safeties to communicate and what different motions mean in this offense. So if I'm a corner, so we're just going to start out outside and work in. If I'm a corner and I see, and remember we're in what I would call quarters coverage. We call it mod or we call it sky. When I'm looking at, I've got my triangle, right? So I've got my receiver and I've got my slot receiver. So when I'm looking from receiver to slot, I'm making sure that when that guy motions, boom, I snap my eyes directly to one. I become man coverage. If I don't feel that guy motion, then I'm going to what I call rail it, or which is just zone quarters, and I'm going to bail out looking at the mesh but reading my receiver in the peripheral. Most times in the boundary, that's where you get the fade wheel. Normally don't get a fade wheel into the field unless they reduce, and so you should be able to have your divider rules, your split rules, and all that. Now, our split rule within the flexbone is anytime we get a flex set or we get two receivers stacked together, we're going to check the cloud. So anytime we call that flex in the flexbone. So anytime you get a flex set, you want to make sure that you are running cloud coverage. So let's get into the motions and talk to them about it. So the very first motion that we're going to go to is the flexbone 101. Okay, we've got a split set, meaning everybody's wide. We've got our two slot receivers and we got our fullback. Now, I'm always going to work all these motions. I'm going to work from the defense's right to the left just to make it easy for everybody and give a visual because it goes the same way. Remember, this is a true 2x2 offense. So if you run flex, if you run a split field defense, everything reacts to the same. Again, this is why I like a split field defense because I don't have to worry about are we slingshotting, are we rocking and rolling, are we doing anything different. To me, I want to be as static as possible pre-snap for the numbers, and then we will react to everything post-snap off of what we get. So all we're going to have is we're going to have the slot to the right, what I would call the weak slot, and he's just going to motion behind. It's just a regular orbit motion. Now, the way that I teach the safeties is this. I want to read my slot and the other slot at the same time. I need to have, just like you would teach a corner, a triangle, or use your peripheral read in off coverage, off zone coverage. We're going to do the same thing for the safeties. Now, there's a couple of things that you can do to help them out. I like a slight tilt inside. I like to be outside alignment of the slot, and I like to have a slight tilt inside. The reason I like that is because our first step, if they were to motion towards me, is to just take a step down. It's a sink technique. We are not slamming down. You will get in trouble if you start slamming down. Again, I was at Midlothian for 3 years when we ran the flexbone. One of the biggest things that they would get us, especially with the younger safeties, is the moment that they start feeling that safety come just hammering down, they would just leak out the slot on a little sail route, and that backside safety can't get to it. You slam that safety down, and it's just an easy throw for that quarterback. You just got to throw over pressure. So what I tell them is sink down. It's literally the opposite of our step off technique. It's a step replace, but we are stepping down on the outside shoulder. I want to still watch the non-motion slot because his departure angle is going to tell me where the ball is going. If he arcs, the ball is going outside. If he's down, it's going right off tackle. If he inserts, it's going behind him just like it would be on an ISO play with Y off. Safeties have to understand that I'm looking at my slot but I'm also looking at the other slot. Now, some guys will tell their guys to just cross key it. I don't necessarily want to cross key it. I think of it more of like a high beam, low beam. I want a high beam on my slot. I want a low beam on the other slot. I just need to feel the motion coming so I know to sink down. We just give a motion call, and all he's going to do when he gets his guy motion, and I'm talking about the boundary safety, which would be to the motion side. Once his slot starts to motion, he's just going to give motion. You can give a color, a number, or whatever you want to call, and all he's going to do is crab. And all crab means I'm gonna just step, replace, going sideways. So I'm just gonna crab through. All I need to do is be able to stack that tackle and be able to get to the vertical of the opposite slot. Defending the flex bone, if you can do this and you can defend the motions and you can line up correctly, you can defend any offense. It was eye-opening for me. I had never worked in a flex bone wing tee ever. And then I got to Midlothian, and I felt it made me such a better defensive coach because of the way that you have to defend things. You can't just blitz in the flex bone into oblivion, which we'll talk about in part 3. You can't just go ahead and do funky alignments or anything like that, because they'll find where you're weak at, and then they'll attack it. It's very much an if-then offense. And unless you can just line up in the gaps and you can man cover everybody, and you've got a dude at free safety. We played SOC one year, South Oak Cliff one year, and that's what they had. They had a bunch of D1 kids. They got in gaps and they just manned us up, and we had no answer for it. So that's kind of where you get in trouble in this offense. It's hard to manufacture some things in this offense if you just don't have the dudes. But the one thing that they can do is if you miss a line one time or you're not reacting to a motion, they're going to out leverage you, and then it's going to be a house call. So we want these guys, these safeties, everything is a step replace. Everything is slow until you need to be fast, right? Everything is slow through the snap of the ball. Once we see where the non-motion slot is going to go and where his departure is, then we're reacting off of it. So the other part too is you don't want him to start running over there, because the second motion that we're going to talk about is the twirl, what I call twirl motion or return motion. The moment you start doing that, they're going to return motion you, they're going to out leverage you, and then everybody's walled up inside. You got one corner out there on a receiver, and if their receivers can block, which most flexbone offenses, their receivers can block, now you're in trouble. So again, let's go through this. Orbit motion, just typical flexbone 101 orbit motion. We got defense motion from the right to the left. My safety's going to sink down with his eyes on his slot. So the moment that he gets motion to me, his eyes are going to get to his slot, seeing that motion all the way through. That's what we call through to 2. So I want to watch my guy through the fullback and then snap my eyes to 2, because he's going to tell me where the ball's going. So if it's a pass, he's going to go vertical. The other thing that I always taught my DBs, especially in the flexbone offense, was look at their eyes. If their eyes are to me, they're blocking me, right? Because if their eyes are down the field, they're trying to get to a spot. Okay, remember, these offenses, they don't necessarily run an extended route tree. So if they're not looking at me or they're not looking at a defender, it is a pass. So I need to then think, okay, something's up. So when we get this motion, I'm going to sink down to about, so I'm aligned at 9 to 8. I'm going to sink down to about 6. Because all I need to do is, if it is pass, is sail technique, which is just open up and backpedal over top of the orbit motion and look for a sail route coming back. Because that's the one thing, because I get asked that, and that was the one way that our offense would attack us if we were too heavy with that safety, is that they would just run simple flood, and the flat route would be the orbit motion, and then they would sneak that little sail route. Because remember, your backside safety is working over the top from the backside. He's chasing. It's the same thing like solo. So if you ever teach solo or poach technique, it's the same thing. What's the one thing that you don't want in a poach technique? You don't want that guy running a corner route away from that safety and with no help away from him. So that's kind of how we alleviated that. Anytime that we'd get motion away, that jack backer or that outside linebacker would just snap down to the line of scrimmage and play heavy right there on the line of scrimmage. If it's pass, you can have them cut one, but remember, we're in man coverage if you get motion away. So the corner on the right-hand side, as it's motioning away to the left, is going to snap his eyes to 1, and he's got man coverage. If I'm the corner, I'm just going to start, I'm going to bail out as quickly as I possibly can. That way I can kind of see everything. and allow that safety to fin underneath me. So we still have a cap, we still have an intermediate, and we still have a flat route defender. And really what we're trying to do here is if it does end up being passed, that Sam linebacker's working through that slot to the quarterback, he would be first contained and then let that mic wrap around on the other side. What we really tried to do is not get those outside linebackers too much involved in the passing game. Our biggest thing was we've got 4 DBs. So let's cover the 4 receivers. That was the biggest thing for us. We've got the 2 slots. We've got the 2 receivers. Let's let them cover it out. So that is your typical 101 movement. We're working through the fullback. If my guy's motioning, I'm going to crab, try and get in that B gap. If the motion's to me, I'm going to sink on top of my safety, outside leverage, making sure that I cannot get hooked inside. That's another issue is guys start sinking inside and then they get hooked by the arc. I want to sink outside kind of at an angle. That way, if that guy arcs, I can go fit that up real quick and hit that thick and be the force player and work off into the pitch on that. Okay. Now the next one off of this is twirl motion. Anytime we have a twirl, we are taking it. Twirl equals take. You're blitzing the twirl. It's essentially blitzing from depth from the twirl. So we get the same motion, but he doesn't cross the fullback. And normally we got really good at, you can tell the angle of it. A lot of times on these twirl motions, they'll actually angle at the fullback and it won't be as deep of an angle because they're not going across. So they'll kind of aim at that fullback so they don't get too deep. That was one of the things that our kids kind of picked up and that we kind of relied on was look at the angle. If you feel that guy going, he's going to run into the fullback, he can't run into the fullback. So he's going to twirl out. And so we could get our safeties to almost not even move once they kind of saw that. So once you get that twirl, we want to now slam down on that thing. I'm blitzing to the outside shoulder as fast as I possibly can to go set that edge. I want to meet that guy as close to the box as I possibly can. Now, the biggest thing that you have to do is I don't want to just run up the field. The moment I run up the field, you give what's called a duck up, or they can backdoor you. It's just like a corner in a screen. You don't want to just run by the screen block, especially on a bubble. You don't want to just run by that. That way you want to dip and rip. You want to be real thick through that, and you want to almost set the edge. I should be parallel to the line of scrimmage when I meet that block. Okay. And we work this in a drill. We would have them work that twirl motion and we would meet them at the line of scrimmage and really hit it thick and really be square. That's one of the things that DBs tend to do. You see this a lot of times on Saturdays sometimes, especially in these bigger formations, these 12 personnel formations where they get in wings. You'll get a corner down there and the first thing he'll do is he'll just turn perpendicular to the line of scrimmage, giving the chest to the blocker and then just get blasted out of there. So what we want to do, especially a DB wise, we want to keep everything square. Right. And this is just kind of goes as good defensive, right? Just defensive teaching. And again, when you go against the flex bone, it really forces your defense to be very technically sound. So we wanted the safeties to then, when they get to the line of scrimmage, you should be square and you're going to hit that slot on the outside shoulder, prepared for the cut. Now in Texas, our guys can still cut a little bit, but I know in other states they can't cut. So you want to make sure that you fit that thing outside shoulder, and I'm gonna work my hands on those shoulder pads, and I'm really gonna set that. That way, if anything, if you do get a pitch, you're making that thing run the hump as much as you can and let everybody rally. Now, what about the safety that's sinking down? Remember, I don't want to slam down. So all I want to do is be sinking down. The moment I hear twirl, boom, I'm snapping my eyes to the non-motion slot, because a non-motion slot doesn't lie. What's probably going to happen is that he's going to run the orbit. So as he's running the orbit, now they're doing some sort of like counter option. They're running some sort of trap option. They're doing something where he's now coming across, and they're going to have to time it out. So that's why he's not motioning. So now he's coming across for the pitch. If I see him go across, I just want to start traveling. Remember, I'm quarterback, cutback, reverse. We want to make sure that we stay at home and we never cross the center until we know the ball is out and the ball has crossed the center. So the worst thing that can happen is that your safety chases that guy on the orbit, and then they hit a trap on the backside or they just do some sort of counter option where they just hit a dive on the backside, and now you're screwed. So we want to make sure that we understand that. So again, let's go over the two basic motions that you're going to get. Regular orbit motion, I'm through to 2, I'm crabbing if it's my guy. If I'm the safety to the motion, I'm going to sink down very slowly, reading the non-motion slot. If I'm a corner and I get motion away from me, snap my eyes, it's Meg coverage. If I'm the corner and I see motion to me, I'm zoning off. If I'm the safety and I get a twirl, take it. Go right now. Let's talk about flex and how that changes it. Now we're in cloud. Okay, so flex means that we've got a stack on the box. It's close to the box. It could be a tight end wing. Okay, and a lot of times in these flex bones, the slot's always going to be attached to the tackle. So he's always going to be that three-man surface. So even if you get a tight end, he might still be in. Even if it's a wing, it doesn't matter. We're always going to cloud it. Now, this is where it changes. If I get motion to me and I'm the corner, I'm blitzing the motion. I'm the pitch man anyway. Go get the pitch man. Okay, I want to have enough width that I can do that. Now, how do we figure this out in the secondary for the safeties? We're giving a flip call, and this is why it's so important. And I'm going to talk about when we get a double stack, why we've got to make sure that we're talking a double switch. So the safeties are going to communicate, hey, I've got a switch on my side. Hey, we're sky on my side. So anytime I get motion to the stack, we're going flip, flip, flip. And all flip is a super rotation. So the safety's working to replace the corner. He knows he's blitzing it. So the moment that guy crosses, that corner is blitzing vertically to go meet the pitch. That safety is expanding over top, and he's going to now assume any kind of cloud rule for the corner. Remember, you still have 2 receivers, and then the boundary safety again is going to work just like he would if his guy was motioning. He's going to work to now just try and get to the guard so that we can play that stack. One side is running split, the other side is running cloud, and we're going to send that corner right now. Anytime that we get a flex set, we're basically killing the Sam in any kind of pass responsibility. And to be honest with you, most of the time you don't want those guys in pass responsibility anyway. We can play the triangle with the Mike. And if we just get pure drop back right off of that, Mike sees it, and all he's got to do is get to wall 2. It's a really tight in there anyway. Most flexbone guys don't get in these wide splits. They get in tight splits, so it's not that far for them to go. Now, if we get the slot from the stack going to the split side, all we're going to get is the safety to the split side is going to sink down. We're going to give a choke for the corner, meaning that all he's going to do is basically choke that wide receiver. He's going to get closer to that wide receiver. We're no longer running cloud. And again, if I get motion away from me, it's man-to-man. So I'm going to lock my eyes on that. And then the safety to the stack side is just going to start working again, trying to get to the guard. So that way he can get to the vertical of the split side. If I get a corner to the motion, again, I'm mod. Corner away from the motion, I'm going to choke it, and I'm going to play man. So again, let's go flex. If we get a flex set, we're going to go cloud, which we would call switch, is just to make sure, hey, we're switching. The corner is now responsible for the flat. The safety is now responsible for the cap. And so if we get motion to the stack, the corner is going to blitz the motion. It's just like a cat call. We're blitzing the motion. That safety is going to work down and outside, working that sail technique if it is a pass, making sure I get vertical. And a lot of times what we ended up doing, if we really felt like, let's say it was second and long, or let's say it was kind of maybe second and 1, and we thought maybe they were going to take a shot, or maybe they were trying to do something pass-wise, you could get those safeties to now stack that outside receiver, so that way you kind of know it. I don't like that. I like them always kind of staying close to that tackle when we get any kind of a flex. So they're just going to stay close to that tackle. The moment that they get motion to it, he should be moving anyway. He's going to start working to the outside of that receiver. Now, if we get twirl motion, it's easy, because if I get twirl motion, I'm hammering it down, and then we just play regular cloud to the stack. Jet motion is something that you see, and so we're going to talk a little bit about the jet motion. Our offense loved to do jet motion. We treated it just like an orbit. We would give a jet call, and that meant everybody needs to react quicker. You're not going to get a return motion off of a jet, right? Because the angles aren't there. They're not going to send that guy in a jet to the quarterback and then reverse him right at the quarterback. That's a lot of people right there by the quarterback. So anytime we got a jet, everybody, that was the only time where everybody kind of moved as quickly as possible. That corner's working to the line of scrimmage. We've got the safety working to get to replace the corner, and we got that boundary safety again working to stack that guard. We don't want to be flying over there, but we do want to make sure that we're a lot quicker when we get that jet motion. Now, this is one of our checks that we came up with at Midlothian, and I feel like it really helped us out. Anytime that we got a double stack, right? So we got double flex. We gave a Maui call because the kids were like, hang loose, right? This is our switch call. All it is the hang loose sign. Well, when you go double hang loose, we want to make sure that we've got double hang loose. So we called it Maui, 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 just so that it was different. So it wasn't just switch, because when everybody's close and everybody's hearing switch, we wanted to make sure that everybody knew Maui, 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 because we wanted to we wanted the secondary to understand what we were doing, but we didn't want to mess with anything. And again, when you have a unique language for a shell, you don't have to worry about, does the outside linebacker know what we're doing? Does the Mike know what we're doing? We're not changing anything coverage wise, but what we're doing is we're playing super aggressive to any kind of motion with the corners. So again, the corners are now, we know we're in a Maui. We know that we have the opportunity to have a double cat, which means that if we get motion, I'm going to cat it. If I get motion to me, I'm going to cat it. So both those corners have to be highly ready to go. We're both tilted in towards the flex, so that one, if we need to, we can just get into a sail technique if we get any flat push to the flat, or I'm ready to plant, trigger down on any motion, or plant and trigger vertical for any kind of vertical. So again, it's the same thing with the flex. It's just we've got a double flex, and we called that Maui. It was hang loose. So we got a double switch, which means we were now going to run Maui. All right, let's go in again. What we did in part one is we went through every single formation that we normally got. And so what we're going to do now is talk about, well, what if we get unbalanced? So I get unbalanced, right? I've got two receivers. We call this over. Okay. And I've got my two slots. Well, I'm going to, anytime I get a single receiver, I know for the corner, I'm going to play that like man. Boundary safety doesn't cross the center. So if the slot to the unbalanced side, to the three receiver side, starts moving, all we're going to do, that boundary safety is going to work to the tackle and give a switch call, because essentially we've made a stack. Our biggest thing was, if you're down, you're down. You don't go up once you're down. So for the corner, if we get a overset and it's unbalanced, that corner is already down. He's taking that slot. I'm not really worried about the slot going vertical off of it. He's got a choke technique. The moment that we get motion back to that single side or that open side, we want to make sure that we give a switch call. Now, we're in what's called flip. Okay, so anytime we get an over, and I explained this in part one, anytime we get an over, we're going to super rotate that. Our outside linebackers don't leave the box. Our box never changes. That was the biggest thing that we wanted. Our box doesn't change. So the free safety is going to get 4x1 off of the dead receiver. Everybody yelling, dead, dead, dead. Okay, his eyes are on the slot. He's working through his man to the slot. All he's got to do is make sure I've got outside leverage. Corner knows that I'm in Meg because it's unbalanced. So we've given an over call by the corner. Everybody knows that it's over. Once they get the over call, we're going flip, flip, flip. The safety knows I'm going to roll down on top of the dead man. Everybody's pointing. He's dead. He's dead. I'm looking at the slot, and the boundary safety is now going to stack that guard, not crossing the A gap. The moment that we get motion, that free safety is not changing, because if the moment that you start bringing that guy back, they're just going to run a screen out there. Okay, remember, we're in the age of the spread. The spread's won. A lot of these flexbone teams are taking some of these spread concepts like RPOs. They're taking these screens or just kind of these now throws, and they're implementing it into there because of the way defenses are playing. If you're going to play your corners at 10 yards off, they're going to throw nows to the receivers. Okay, so the moment that we start that motion, he's not going to change. He now knows that I'm now expecting twirl motion. If I get twirl motion, I am blitzing the outside of that dead receiver. I'm going now. Right now, set the edge, because I know the ball's coming and I need to be able to set the edge and let everybody rally to it. So again, we're in over. If we get motion back to the over side, which would be the single slot side, Away from the unbalanced, we're giving a switch call because that's what it's created. It's created a high-low. We're going to get a push. We're going to get a push route, and then we're going to get the slot. So the boundary safety needs to snap his eyes to the slot, and the slot's going to tell him where it is. If we get what's called an overflex, so now instead of a 3 receiver look, we now have a wide receiver and a stack. So the safety, again, we're going to get a flip call. Safety, again, is looking at the slot. We're all pointing at the dead receiver. Sam's going to widen out, and he's going to stack on top of the flex receiver or the dead receiver, working thick through. Nothing changes. If I get motion back to the overside, right, away from the unbalanced side, it just turns into a switch. So the corner now is going to take the pitch right now, and the boundary safety is going to work. The one thing that you can get into trouble, and that's where, if you're watching this on YouTube, the one thing that I illustrate in this is a corner route by the single slot. And that's the one route that can hurt you. That's why that boundary safety has to get over there to the tackle, because that's the one route that they can beat you with, is some sort of a smash concept where you're getting a flat push by the orbit motion, and then you're getting a corner route where all he's got to work. So if the corner, it gets to the line of scrimmage and he sees that it's passed, he's going to open up and sail technique that and almost get like you would teach in a cover 2 smash anyway. Get to that midpoint right there, so that ball has to sail over top of me, so that way I can help that safety gain a little bit of momentum. But that safety is essentially playing man coverage from inside at about 8 yards. So the moment that you get that, let's talk about these more spread alignments. So now we've got what we would call slot twins. So we've got a 2 receiver split out wide and traditional, and then we've got a slot receiver on the other side. So it's twin slot. We're going to go ahead. Anytime we get this, we're going to give a cloud call. So cloud call just means we're going to play cover 2. Now, if we wanted to just play this, let's say it's one of those where they're getting wide splits with the slot and they're just trying to get you out. All we're going to do is check what we call black. Black just means man. So if we go black, 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 everybody knows that it's man. So our man tags are all colors. The moment that he motions, we're going to travel with him. This is the only time that we're going to travel, is any time that we check any kind of man coverage. If we go man, that's what we're going to do. So we have 2 ways to play the slot twin. We can either play it cloud or we can play it black. So we want to play black because we feel like they're really spreading us out. Now, if they get in tight, let's say they're super spread and they stack, we can go ahead and play switch. That's our man match cover 2 over top of a stack. But what we don't want is a safety, the Sam linebacker, to have to work all the way out. So what we can do is, if it's a distance set, and we want to play regular sky, we can play regular sky. Okay, if we feel like we want that guy to be closer and we want to give that quarterback a quick read, we don't want the quarterback carrying the ball, then we can keep him there and we can go black. Okay, black tells everybody that we're in man coverage. So the moment that he motions, that safety who's with the motion has to go. Now, if they were to motion back to a slot, or let's say the slot receiver motions back in an orbit, we check the sky. Everybody goes back. Hey, Omaha. Check sky. Everybody's just moving back to sky. And now I'm sinking down on top of the slot because I'm the safety away from the motion. And then I'm working to the tackle, working to the B gap, because I'm the person to the motion where we're watching the non-motion slot. Now, the other side of this is, what if you run cloud? That's when we get a trap technique by the corner. This is really kind of the only time I like to run trap, is if we run cloud, that corner, and he gets motion to him, it's the corner that's going. So remember, anytime we're down, I stay down. Anytime we're back, I stay back. So these are the top formations and the top motions that you're going to see. Any return motion means I'm triggering it, I'm taking it. Any orbit motion for the safeties, I'm sinking towards it, and then I'm traveling with it. But I don't ever cross the center until I know the ball has crossed the center, because you'll get in trouble. They'll start running things back the other way. The other thing that you can do, and this was one of the things, you start really rocking and rolling with that motion, you're going to get F option the opposite way, and you don't have a pitch player. That's one of our best plays that we would run, is we'd get them going with this motion. They start really hammering down, especially on short distance. They want to get numbers over there. Next thing you know, we reverse out and we're running F option the other way to the open side. You've got everybody rocking one way. You don't have a pitch player on the other side. So really important to communicate. Let's go over the basics just to review. If I'm the corner and I have motion to me, I'm going to zone it. If I have motion away from me, I'm going to man it. If I'm the safety and I have motion to me, I'm sinking down slowly. If I'm the safety and my guy's motioning away from me, I'm just going to crab. I'm going to step replace, working no further than the guard and then snapping my eyes 3 to 2. Outside linebackers, if I'm sitting there and my guy leaves, I just want to walk down to the line of scrimmage. If I'm the outside linebacker and I get motion to me, it doesn't matter. I'm looking at the quarterback. I'm reading the non-motion slot. Right. His departure angle is going to tell me. That's the biggest thing that the kids have to understand. And from all the flexbone people that I've talked to, this isn't like a wing T offense where they can give you a false key with a guard. 99% of the time on most of these offenses, wherever that non-motion slot blocks, that's where the ball's going. So make sure that you understand that when you're defending this. Keeping a split coverage shell really helps you alleviate pressure with motion, and it gives you a top-down mentality. Your kids can see it. I think, that was the biggest thing for me talking to my players, what they liked. I mean, these kids grew up running the flexbone. Okay, so they saw it in middle school. They saw it in high school. They've seen it all the time. What do you like when you defend in the flexbone? Oh, coach, I like to be able to see it. I like playing down. Okay, so and I prefer that as well. And I found it is much easier to play down than it is to play back. So that's why I don't like a cover 3 versus the flexbone. You start getting into some situations where you're a man short. If you're going to run cover 3 and do that, you better have a dude at free safety and basically just use him as a wild card, right? Get into 6-1, let that guy sit there, clog all the gaps, and then let your free safety just be the wild card. I mean, when we played South Oak Cliff the one year, that's what they did. They had a kid. He went to like Arizona or Arizona State, freak. They put him at 8 yards, and he just sat there, and then he attacked. If you ever seen the Georgia versus Georgia Tech stack game with Roquan Smith basically just annihilated Georgia Tech over and over from that stack, that 3-4 stack defense that they were running. That's essentially what you're doing with that if you want to run single high and you just man up your corners. So this is motions. This is part 2 of our series. The last part, which we'll go over next week, is going to cover the blitzes and the pressures. So I wanted to make sure we did formations, then the base motions, the different coverage aspects off of that, the communication piece off of that. The biggest thing, because I know this is going to come up, coach, how do you teach this? How do you practice? How do you rep this? Do pods, work half field, and just work the motions. That was the biggest thing for us. Most flexbone offenses run pods anyway within their practice structure. So defensively, it makes it really easy if you would do the same when you're teaching that. So when you're doing this, break it down into half and just have a half field work one motion and then have the other half field work the other motion. And you can get more reps, and 2, you really kind of get that communication piece off of it. And the biggest thing, again, make sure that you have a flex rule and you have a open rule and a sky rule and an over rule. Talk about everything. What are we going to do when we get too tight? What are we going to do when we get base? What are we going to do if it's a tight end? Are we going to change anything? Unbalanced doesn't really change anything, because if they leave the tight end on one side and you have a stack, you treat it like a stack. That would be the only difference. When we played Centennial, Burleson Centennial, they were different from us. We never had a tight end, so we would never leave a tight end on the backside. They had tight ends, and they would leave the tight end there. Well, that changes the way that you do things. You can't flip, right? You can't flip to the unbalanced. So you have to treat it just like you would regular. It's the line in the box that has to adjust to the unbalanced, not the secondary. The secondary doesn't have to adjust to it, because you still have 2 eligible. So I got to run my switch tag. I have 1 eligible and then a receiver outside. I run regular sky. It's kind of that, rhino, lion, hippo left, hippo right, whatever tag you give for unbalanced. It's the inside. It's the box that has to adjust if it's tackle over. If it's Y over, that's just flex. Now we're rotating with the secondary. So that's the biggest thing that you need to understand. If they move a receiver, the secondary is the one that changes. If they move a tackle, it's the line that has to change. It's the front 7 that has to change. That's the biggest thing that'll keep you in track and keep you lined up. At the end of the day, line up correctly. Don't overexert yourself trying to fit up on these motions. Stay at home, and you'll have success versus the flexbone.